Okay, so today we're going to talk about how to create and solve inequalities, and we've already seen inequalities in this class. We've already worked with inequalities in this class. We've already solved inequalities in this class. So today we're really going to focus on just creating an inequality given a word problem. So let's get started with some vocabulary. So first of all, just remember that what an inequality is. It's just a statement that compares two expressions with inequality symbols. And here are all your inequality symbols, and you already have this in your notes and in previous notes, and you've already seen them and you've worked with them a lot. Those are your inequality symbols. All right. And also just a quick recap of what we did a few weeks ago. Remember that when we have less than or greater than, and we're graphing this on a number line, you're always going to use an open circle. Greater than means if it's like x is greater than negative 4.75. Okay, so actually that would be negative 4.25. So if it's x is greater than negative 4.25, then we're starting at negative 4.25, and because it's a greater than symbol, that means x is going to be anything that's bigger than negative 4.25, not including negative 4.25. And that's why we have the open circle. We can't include negative 4.25. Whereas with less than or equal to and greater than or equal to, we would actually shade in the circle because we can't include that point. We can't include that point, and that's why we shade the circle, and then we just go left or right depending on whether it's less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. And again, here are some keywords. We're just going to go through this quickly because you already have this in previous notes. But just remember all of these keywords that when you see them in a word problem, they would mean an inequality. Okay, so you need to commit these to memory and study them for your upcoming test. So before we get into the word problems, let's just do a quick review of how to solve an inequality. Remember, with inequalities, you would solve them the same way you would solve an equation, right? Only difference is instead of an equal sign, you have an inequality symbol, but that's fine. So first we would distribute just like we would if this was an equation, and our goal is to isolate that variable. So 4/3 times 6 would be 8. That would be 8x plus, let's see, that would be 12. 4/3 times positive 9 would be 12, and that's less than 4. All right, what do you do next? Well, you subtract by 12 on both sides, and you're left with 8x is less than negative 8. Okay, now remember from a couple weeks ago that we flip the inequality symbol only when we divide or multiply both sides by a negative number, right? Just because this turned negative here, that doesn't mean we're going to flip our inequality symbol because we did not divide or multiply both sides by a negative number. Okay, and your last step would just be to divide by 8, and that's positive 8, so we're not going to flip the inequality symbol. It would just be x is less than negative 1. If you were to plot this on a number line, which I want you to do on your notes, you would start at negative 1. You would have an open circle on negative 1, right, because it's a less than symbol, and you would shade the space to the left because x can be anything that is smaller than, less than negative 1. Okay? All right, next problem. So again, solve this just like you would an equation. So we would distribute first. So that would be negative 1/2 x. And then this is negative 2 times a positive 2. So that would be a negative 4. So negative 1/2 minus 4 is greater than or equal to 5. Okay? And then same steps as if this was an equation. We would get rid of the addition or subtraction. In this case, it's subtraction by adding 4 inverse operations. We'd be left with negative 1/2 x is greater than or equal to 9. Okay, now take a look at what we're going to have to do next. So remember when we were doing equations, how do we get rid of a fraction? We multiply by the reciprocal. Inequalities will do the same thing. We have to multiply by the reciprocal in order to get rid of that negative 1/2, which would be negative 2/1, or just negative 2, but we are multiplying both sides of the inequality symbol by a negative, okay? So that'll cancel out. But when we're multiplying both sides of an inequality by a negative, what do we need to do? We need to flip the inequality symbol. So remember that. We need to flip the inequality symbol whenever we're multiplying both sides of an inequality by a negative. And then if you were to graph this, we would just be starting at negative 18. We'd have a closed circle this time because we are including negative 18, and we would shade to the left. Let's do some word problems now. All right, so go ahead and pause the video and take some time to read this on your own, and then we'll go through it. So pause the video, read this word problem on your own. If you want to try to solve it, and then we'll go through it. So first of all, what is this problem asking for? The possible cost of each blank shirt. Okay, possible cost of each blank shirt. Now, what information do we have? Well, something that popped up at me right away is no more than, right? She doesn't want to spend more than $99, and we know no more than means less than or equal to, and it's going to be less than or equal to 99. If you forgot that, if you forgot some of your keywords, just think about it in terms of context. Trina cannot spend more than $99, so she spends $100. That should just make intuitive sense that, hey, she can't do that. That's more than $99. So that right there should tell you, hey, your inequality symbol is going to be less than or equal to. Her cost has to be either equal to 99 or smaller than 99. So over here, well, we need to figure out what goes on the left-hand side. We're looking for the possible cost of each blank shirt, right? Well, let's take a look at this information. She's buying 12 shirts. So she's buying 12 shirts. It doesn't specifically say that's multiplication, but I mean, she's buying 12 shirts. Each blank shirt is going to be a certain price. So we're going to have to multiply 12 by whatever price the blank shirt is, right? But we're not just going to multiply by whatever price the blank shirt is, because if you read the second sentence, it says she will choose a style for the blank shirts, right? So that's the cost of the blank shirts. We'll use B. She will choose a style for the blank shirts, and then pay an additional charge. She's paying an additional charge that's going to be plus of $2.75 for each shirt. For each shirt, right? So if it just said an additional $2.75 for the entire order, then $2.75 would not go in the parentheses. But it's an additional charge of $2.75 for each shirt. So we also need to multiply $2.75 by 12, because that charge will be for each shirt that she buys. It's not a one-time flat fee. All right? And this would be your inequality. Once you get it into this form, you just solve it the way that we did the last two problems. You first use the distributive property, right? So that would be 12b plus, and then 12 times 2.75 would be 33, and that's less than or equal to 99. Then you subtract 33 on both sides, and you get 12b. And I'm doing this part rather rapidly, but feel free to pause it or slow down the speed of the video. But this is something that we've done extensively, so you should know how to solve inequalities already. And then we divide by 12 on both sides, and if you do that, you get your answer, which is B is less than or equal to 5.5. Okay, so she can't spend more than $5.50. Or in other words, she can spend exactly $5.50 or lower. Now, go ahead and pause the video and read through this problem. This problem, if you want to try to do it before I actually do it, I'll just give you a little hint. This problem, we're going to have variables on both sides of the inequality. Don't freak out. We're just going to solve this the same way that we solved equations that had that have variables on both sides of the inequality. So go ahead and pause it and take your time on solving this word problem. Okay, so we're looking for the amount of weeks that an ad has to run in order for the daily info to be less expensive than the cost of the People's Paper. So let's do this the same way that we set up equations yesterday. Let's go ahead and do a big picture model here. Less expensive is obviously going to mean less than. Now, what do we want to be less than something else? So in this case, we want daily info, right, to be less than People's Paper. So just like we did yesterday with those word problems with equations. Let's just do a big picture here. We want daily info to be less than people's paper. Well, what do we know about daily info? We know that daily info charges $650, right? Flat fee, $650. Plus, right? Plus is obviously going to mean addition. $80. Now, $80 does depend on week. We have that per word, which is that rate word, which means we're going to multiply 80 times week. Depends how many weeks you get that paper, $80 per week. Whereas People's Paper doesn't have an initial fee. Okay, People's Paper only charges $145 per week, right? So that would just be $145 per week to run an ad in their paper, right? And then once you have it in this format, you just solve it the way we did with equations. So let me erase this stuff. Well, remember, you want your variable. Well, first you distribute, no distributing here. Second is combine like terms. We don't have any like terms here. Next step is get your variables on the same side. So that is what we would have to do next. And if you do that, you would end up with 650 is less than 65 W. Okay, then you would divide by 65 on both sides, and you would get 10 here, and then W. Now, normally we'd like having the variable first to just read this backwards. If you read this backwards, that's just W is greater than 10. So that means now we want it less expensive. That's why we used a greater than symbol, right? I'm sorry, that's why we use a less than symbol initially, right? Because if it's exactly 10 weeks, is that less expensive? No, that's the same price, right? But 11, 12, 13, 14 weeks, then the daily info starts being less expensive than the People's Paper to run an ad, okay? And that's it. We'll work on more of these in class together, but that's all you need for your notes. And I will see you in class.